Greetings and Shabbat Shalom, Temple Beth Shalom, Rabbi Box here with Parshat HaShavua. Like we've had in many other weeks before, we are in a double Parsha this week. We are in Parshat Behar and Parshat Bechukotai. Behar is chapter 25:1 through 26:2, and Bechukotai is 26:3 through 27:34. So we're continuing with the pursuit of holiness as we've been doing for many Torah Parshiyot coming since or behind. And now we're talking about the principles of land tenure. We're talking about the sabbatical year, that the land shall observe a Sabbath. 6 years you may prune your vineyard, and on the seventh year you are to lay it barren and let it lay it not barren, but not prune it, not gather in your harvest. You're giving the land a year to rest, to break. And there are certain laws and rules that are allowed and not allowed, and we do this. They still do this today in Israel. They still have the Jubilee year, and again, there are exceptions and rules and such, but generally speaking, they do follow along the one that happens to be in the Bible, the year of the Jubilee. So then we continue with this Sabbath of complete rest. There's a mention here of the Day of Atonement, kind of relating this Day of Atonement to the Jubilee year. The idea that it's a complete rest, a complete stop, a complete Sabbath, if you will, and nothing is to be done. We then continue with security and abundance on the land, and how that is to be achieved and what is required of that to have that happen. We talk about indebtedness and indenture. What happens after a certain amount of time in the Jubilee year? You are also people are forgiven of their debts and forgiven of their sins, of their they're not their sins necessarily, but what they owe to people. It's after 7 years, it's forgiven. And there's also discussion about how it affects the resident alien living on the ground versus the citizen. And then there's talking about what happens if you are a servant to a non-Israelite, or a non-Israelite is a servant to an Israelite, and there's different things that different laws that are contained that deal with those specifically. And then we continue to with the pursuit of holiness in Parshat Bechukotai. In Parshat Bechukotai, now this is the last parsha of the book of Leviticus. So when we get to the end, we will say what we normally say after we finish a book of the Torah. But this is considered to be the epilogue to the holiness code. The book of Leviticus is the holiness book, the holiness code, if you will. And we begin with God granting peace in the land, as long as God continues to look with favor upon us. And how does God look with favor upon us? That we live the lives that God has asked us to live. We live our lives based in what the Torah commands us. And basically, we live good lives, and we treat people with kindness and love. That's sort of the basis of the whole of all of the laws. Really, is treating others with kindness and love. But what happens if we don't obey God's commandments, and then God rejects us and spurns us? God lets us know that God is going to wreak misery upon us. We are going to be banished from our land. However, God is, as we hear, God's a vengeful God, but God is also a forgiving God. And God will remember the covenant that God made with us, and will later on bring us back to the land, assuming that we once again embrace the law and live the life that God wants us to live. And there's a lot of really very specific ways in which God will punish us for not obeying. So we go to chapter 27 of Bechukotai, and it's the funding of the sanctuary. Pledges of silver and other things to the shekel, and how much each person is to give as a shekel. And this is so that the sanctuary can be built and maintained. There's pledges of animals. There's consecrations that are done. Remember, the priests, the Levitical, the tribe of Levi is not able. They're not able to own land. So not a lot, but some of the donations, some of the sacrifices that are being donated and given are actually to help feed and support the Levitical priests, which of course is obviously extremely important. And then the end of chapter 27, verses 30 through 33, talks about the two different types of tithes: 1/10 of the yield of the land and 1/10 of the flocks and herds. And then it ends, Ela hamitzvot asher tziva Adonai et Moshe el bnei Yisrael behar Sinai. These are the commandments that the Lord gave Moses to the Israelite people, for the Israelite people on Mount Sinai. And as we are ending the book of Leviticus, we say, Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek. May we go from strength to strength to strength. And may we be strengthened. Shabbat Shalom.